Okay, so I've owned this electric cordless chainsaw here for almost 2 years, so I thought I'd do a video review and also compare it to a gas model. Now, before I start, I should mention that I'm not sponsored. Everything you see in this video I purchased with my own money. Now, with that said, what this is, it's a Kobalt 80 volt max cordless chainsaw. It's made by Greenworks, and it's being sold in Lowe's stores for $399 retail. Now, I didn't pay retail price for this chainsaw. In fact, I've seen this chainsaw pretty consistently on overstock auctions, and in my case, I bought it brand new off of eBay for only $279. Now, if you are looking to purchase this chainsaw, I will mention that there are a couple of different models. There's an older version and a newer version. This is the newer version, and the way to identify the newer version is you have a couple of arrows here on the side of the bar, and also the oil tank design is a little different. And the reason that's important is from what I've read, the newer version puts out a lot more horsepower than the older version, so I think this is probably the one you want to buy. Now, the tool itself comes with a 5-year warranty, which I think is pretty fantastic. The battery comes with a 3-year warranty. Comes with this 5 amp hour battery. It has a 3-segment LED display to show you the charge level. It also comes with this fast charger. Comes with this little scrunch tool. Now, the scrunch tool can be stored in the bottom of the chainsaw here, which I think is a pretty neat feature. And it also comes with the scabbard. Okay, so let me go over the feature set for this Kobalt chainsaw. So first of all, it has a very strong brushless motor. It comes with this Oregon bar and chain. Now, the aftermarket version of this bar and chain is common across multiple homeowner saws like Pull-On and Homelight. So availability of this bar and chain is not going to be a problem. Now, up here you have a mechanical chain brake. Here you have an aluminum wraparound handle, which I think is pretty nice. Most homeowner saws come with a plastic handle. And over here on the side cover, you have 2 retention nuts. And these retention nuts are captive, so when you take off the side cover, you don't drop them on the floor. Now, underneath the side cover is the clutch/brake. And on this model, it's actually an internal system versus an external system. And I think it's far superior to have the internal system because it's not as likely to get gummed up with chainsaw dust and oil. And then over here, you have a steel bucking spike. Now, Kobalt claims that this electric chainsaw is equivalent to a 50cc gas saw. Well, I have a 50cc gas chainsaw to compare it with here. This is my Stihl MS271. But in all fairness to Kobalt, these are not really competing saws. The Kobalt's really a homeowner type chainsaw, whereas this Stihl is a more heavy duty farm and ranch saw, and likewise it puts out more horsepower. So this Stihl puts out about 3.5 horsepower, and I was not able to find horsepower numbers for this Kobalt. But from what I've seen in terms of the performance and the fact that it's competing with other homeowner chainsaws, I think that this probably puts out somewhere around 3 horsepower. Now, in terms of weight, Kobalt claims that fully assembled with battery and bar and chain, that this chainsaw weighs in at 15.3 pounds. Now, Stihl doesn't produce fully assembled numbers, but I put an 18-inch bar, filled it up with chain oil and gasoline, and I weighed this chainsaw with my bath scale, and it weighed in at about 16.5 pounds. Now, while these chainsaws are not necessarily competing in terms of performance, they do compete in terms of price. Because as I mentioned, the Kobalt retails for $399. When I bought this Stihl, the retail price on it was $400. Okay, so next I'm going to do a cut comparison between these two chainsaws. So what I've tried to do in the comparison is try to equalize the saws as much as possible in terms of the bar and chains. And first up is going to be a cross-cut comparison. For that test, I'm going to be using 18-inch Oregon laminated bars on both of these chainsaws. Now, this chainsaw came with an Oregon laminated bar, so I'm just going to use the stock bar that the chainsaw came with. But I have an aftermarket Oregon bar that I'm going to be using for this Stihl. They're both going to be using brand new Oregon chains. In the Kobalt, it's going to be a S62 advanced cut chain. The advanced cut chain is not available for the Stihl, so for the Stihl I'm going to be using an L74 control cut chain. So that's about as good as I could do in terms of equalizing the bars and chains for the crosscut test. Now, after the crosscuts, I'm going to be doing some rip cutting. So I'm going to be slabbing some lumber. That's a more heavy-duty chore. And in that case, I'm going to be using a solid bar for the Stihl. Again, it's going to be an 18-inch Oregon bar, but it's a solid bar. Now, no one makes a solid bar for this Kobalt here, so I'm going to be using an Oregon laminated bar for it. Now, I don't recommend doing any slabbing work with laminated bars, but that's all that's available. So again, both are going to be using Oregon 18-inch bars. And in terms of the chains, I have brand new Archer chains for both of these chainsaws. These are special rip cutting chains. On the Kobalt uses a 3/8 semi-chisel chain, and the Stihl is going to be using a 0.325 inch, also semi-chisel chain. Again, brand new chains in both cases. Now, I know that the Stihl has a bit more power, so I'm going to expect it to outperform the Kobalt a bit, but let's see how the Kobalt does and see if it holds its own. Okay, so we have a very dry Doug fir log here. Ava has measured it at about 13 inches in diameter. So we'll do a little cutting, alternating the saw so that we get roughly the same width or same diameter for each cut. Okay, so let me summarize the woodcut comparison between these two chainsaws. So first of all, in the cross-cutting test, the Kobalt here took about 19.7 seconds per cut on average, whereas the Stihl took about 17 seconds per cut on average. That's about 13.5% faster cut rate for the Stihl here. Now in the rib cutting test, the Kobalt here took about 2 minutes 30.5 seconds on average, whereas the Stihl took only 2 minutes and 2 seconds per average. So in the rib cutting test, the Stihl was actually 19% faster than the Kobalt. Now while this Kobalt doesn't cut nearly as fast as my farm and ranch saw here, it is fast enough, and I do believe the assertion that Kobalt makes that this is roughly equivalent to a 50cc homeowner saw. This does compare pretty nicely to a 46cc homeowner chainsaw that I had before. It is a bit faster than that saw, and it definitely cuts fast enough for its intended use. Okay, so let me summarize my thoughts on this Kobalt chainsaw after using it for the last 2 years. So what I typically use this chainsaw for sort of medium-sized jobs, felling trees of 18 inches in diameter or smaller, bucking them up for firewood, and occasional storm cleanup. And for those kind of jobs, this chainsaw works really, really well. Now, I have done slabbing work with it a couple of times, but I really don't recommend this chainsaw for any kind of slabbing work. It's not a heavy-duty chainsaw. If you're going to be doing slabbing work, I really would recommend bumping up to a farm and ranch saw or even a professional saw. Okay, so let me talk about what I like about this chainsaw. So first of all, I think it's a pretty well thought out design with good features. I love the electric drive aspect of this chainsaw. I like not having to mix gas or have to worry about engine maintenance. I like the fact that it's really low noise, low vibration, no exhaust, and of course it's instant on. So those are all really good features. Also, it's going to save me a lot of time over the equivalent gas model because I'm not worried about the engine maintenance or cleaning out the air filter after a dusty day, or waiting for the engine to warm up, or dealing with cold starts. So those are all really good features in my opinion. Also, it has a really great warranty if you compare it with the equivalent gas model. So 5 years for the tool, 3 years for the battery, I think is quite good. And speaking of the battery, it comes with this 5 amp hour battery, and I have a 2.5 amp hour battery as a spare so that I can be charging one battery while the other one is working. But honestly, I think the 5 amp hour battery that the tool came with is really sufficient for most homeowners. So in my opinion, this chainsaw has good power. It cuts really well. It's pretty well balanced. It feels nice in the hand. Has a nice ergonomic on-off switch. It has some features that I like the internal brake, for example. Also, the battery retention mechanism works really well. So instead of having little push tabs on the side here, you just have a button in the front, and you push that in and your battery just pops out. I think that's really good. Also, the oil cap design is a good design. There's a little flip-up tab here, so you don't have to use tools to open up your oil cap. Now, speaking of the oil system, the oiling system works really well as long as the chainsaw is in this position, in the cross-cut position. When I was doing slabbing work and I had the chainsaw on its side, I noticed that I had to keep the oil tank at least halfway full. If I let the oil go less than halfway full, because of the position of the pickup tube, I wasn't getting enough oil on the chain. So just something to watch out for if you're going to have the chainsaw on its side for any length of time. Okay, so there are only two things which I don't like about this chainsaw. First is the retail price of $399. Now, this is a homeowner saw. It's competing with 50cc gas saws that go for $200. For $400, you could go ahead and get a much more durable farm and ranch saw that's going to last you a very long time. So that brings me to the second point, which is lack of durability. So it's pretty clear that this is not designed for heavy long-term use. The plastics are pretty thin on the chassis, and also the replacement parts are very limited. For example, you can't replace the motor or the controller if those things go out. So whether or not this chainsaw is for you really depends on your intended usage model and your budget. If you're intending to use this as a typical homeowner with occasional trees to cut and a bit of firewood, this is a really good solution. If you're a more heavy-duty user or you're doing slabbing work, you're really going to want to bump up to a more durable chainsaw. So that about sums it up for this chainsaw. And as always, thank you for watching.